Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Football with Moj. Today, I want us to talk about Newcastle United. Yesterday, we saw them be eliminated in the EFL Cup by Manchester City, a game that ended in just 10 minutes. It was already 3-0. And it's unfortunate, but that game told too many stories. A lot of Newcastle fans have had it up to their neck with whatever it is that's going on there. They're now calling for Eddie Howe's head. They're now, calling players that hold the Newcastle DNA, like Dan Burn, out. They don't want them. They're saying they're average and they're not good enough for the club and the aspirations that they have, which I feel like it's not right. It's unfair. You look at a manager like Eddie Howe, you know how good he is. He can assemble a team. We saw him do it at Bournemouth. We saw him come to Newcastle. When he came at Newcastle, they were languishing around the relegation zone. He came there, he stabilized the ship, and he started, going around, the top 10, top 8, top 5 there. And I feel like he has done very well. I don't know what is this with Eddie Howe. He just doesn't seem to be appreciated for how well he has done at Newcastle. And a few months back, I remember Simon Jordan also made assumptions that Eddie Howe wasn't good enough, that they need someone better, that he is not worthy of winning trophies. He can take Newcastle to a certain point, but to that point where they win trophies, he can't do that. But we saw him win something last season against Liverpool, right? The Carabao Cup. He won it. So that means he is capable of winning. So now it's a matter of they need to bring him quality players. And you look at how he has been performing of late. Things haven't just been going well for him. Yesterday, obviously, you wouldn't expect him to win. He's got over 7 players that are out right now. Gamarash, his captain, fantastic, is not there. Botman hasn't been there. Joelinton hasn't been there. Fabian Shah, Livramento. So many of his first team players are not there. He has to work with what he has. And with yesterday's game, you see that, he did put the players that are available, and you could see the plan, try to tell them to, put the pressure up the field. And unfortunately, it didn't work out. Sometimes when you don't have the right type of players, you're always going to be found out. And we have, a team like Manchester City, a team that boasts of good players inside the 11 and on the bench. On the bench, these are players that can make it in any squad in the Premier League. They can make it. They can be They can be first team players in any team outside Manchester City, and this is what you have to compete with. And you look at Newcastle, the type of players they have are just average. Most of them, they only have a good first 11. Outside that 11, it's just average players, and this is what Eddie Howe has to work with. I know now he languishes 11th. I know promises were made when this new owners came into power. Looking at how wealthy they are, you would think that Newcastle were also going to start competing. They were going to attract quality players. But unfortunately, things haven't been that way, because I believe that this takes time. They had, the second best striker in the world in Isaac last season. They sold him to Liverpool. And here is where the kicker is. He wanted to stay. There were promises that were made, and those promises were not kept. That's why he left. That is why he left. Now, if you are to build a quality team, the first thing, right? I think even, the dumbest person in the world would know this. If you are to create a quality team that can fight for the league, that can also rub shoulders with the big teams in the Champions Leagues, you need to keep your best players. And by keeping your best players, it's easier now to attract other quality players, because they go there knowing that, okay, there I have someone as good as Isaac. I've got someone, as good as Tonali, as good as Guimaraes, and we can build from there. But when you start now selling your best players, how are you then going to attract best players? It's like you're starting from afresh. You're starting from the ground, and not many players would want to do that. Not many players would want to start from the ground, so then it makes it very difficult for you to actually fight with these big teams. We saw Ekitike too. He could have went to Newcastle, but as soon as Liverpool came calling, he ditched Newcastle and went straight to Liverpool. And that's something that I feel like we are forgetting. We're forgetting that Newcastle does not have the pool. Newcastle does not have the pool that Liverpool has. It does not have the pool that Newcastle has. It does not have the pool that Arsenal, Chelsea, and Man City has. You know, these are the type of players that you guys have. And I know, of course, the mandate is clear that before 2030, Newcastle should have won the league. But how do you do it? You know, how do you do it? It's going to be difficult. It's going to be really, really difficult. And one of the things I think that Newcastle should not forget is you have to make sure that you keep Tonali. You have to make sure that you keep Gomes. Those players shouldn't go anywhere. And unfortunately, again, for you guys, is that you brought in Voltemade, you brought in Johan Wissa, you brought in Elanga, you brought in Jacob Ramsey as well. And all these players, they costed over £220, and none of them are hitting the ground running. Of course, Voltemade did for the first 10 games or so. Newcastle fans would then say that he was an upgrade from Isaac. Now, all of a sudden, things are not, going accordingly. He's not hitting the stride, and they are shunning him. They're turning their backs on him, and they're calling for his head. It is a big problem. In as much as I sympathize and understand the frustration, sometimes all you gotta do is you have to be patient. You know, you have to understand what is currently happening. Newcastle have been hit by a tornado of injuries. The same thing that Liverpool is currently going through. And unfortunately for Newcastle, they don't have the right type of players. They don't have quality players. Eddie Howe just has to work with what he has. And it's not good enough. You know, it's not good enough. As for Eddie Howe, I believe that Eddie Howe is good enough for Newcastle. Yes, last season he won the Carabao Cup against Liverpool. You know, that's the first story. That is the first story. That is his foundation. And the more he goes further, the more he will bring. But what is needed is that they need to bring him the right type of players. If you bring him the right type of players and not constantly disappointing him in selling the players that he currently has, that he believes that will be good enough to change the club and turn them into champions or winners or competitors at least, then you're killing him. You know, you are killing him. So Eddie Howe, for me, we know how good he can be. You know, we saw him at Bournemouth. He was capable. He knows how to work with what he has. We saw him at Bournemouth at one point when he used to be there, they were difficult to play against. Their transition, you know, their physicality, the speed they showcases, they will run and they're fit. You know, they're fit as a mule. They will run from the first minute until the 90th minute. And this is something that you see with Newcastle too. We saw them how they played against Liverpool at Anfield. That first half, they were just running rings against Liverpool. Even in the, during the second game of the season when they played against Liverpool too, you saw the heart, you saw the grit. They know how to play for the badge. And sometimes these are the type of managers that you need. But for him to get it right, he needs the players. You know, he needs the players. That's all there is here. So I understand, the frustration that they have, but sometimes you just have to look at something as it is and call it out. You know, don't be afraid to look at the problem. You shy away from the problem and you start bringing things that are not there. Imagine they're talking about Dan Burn, someone who breathes Newcastle, someone who understands what Newcastle is about, the culture. They're saying they're calling for his head. He's not good enough for Newcastle. Dan has been so good for Newcastle for a long time. Yes, he might be average, but he hasn't been performing average for the past 5 years, if I recall. He has been doing extremely well. And one thing he needs, especially at this point when things are not going well, is support. This is what Newcastle needs. And it's going to be difficult for Newcastle. It's going to be really difficult for Newcastle because now going back, you can see that they've only had one win in 7 games. And right now, you look at the February fixtures that will be coming thick and fast. It's going to be difficult for them. This weekend, they'll be playing against Brentford. Yet another difficult team, a team that has its ducks in a row, so it's going to be difficult. But, of course, you'd expect Newcastle to do something because they're at home at St. James. The fans will be there too under the lights, so they have to give them, that confidence that they need. They have to give them that drive that they so desperately need. Yesterday, when he was talking, Eddie Howe, he mentioned or alluded to something about confidence. Currently, there's so much that's going that Eddie Howe, he wants to call it out, but he's afraid because he feels like he can just kill off his players and he doesn't want to do that. He doesn't want to do that. So he just has to be careful with what he says. So it's going to be Brentford. That's a difficult game. Then on the 10th of February, it's going to be Hotspurs, Tottenham Hotspur. It's going to be difficult too. You know, there's Villa Park at, there's going to be Aston Villa at the Villa Park. Another difficult game. You know, then there's going to be, of course, the Champions League first leg. You know, the first leg against Karabakh, which I expect them to win. They'll be away at Karabakh. Then there's Newcastle in between before Karabakh comes home to St. James. So it's a very busy schedule for Newcastle this February. And from how they're already turning their heads, you know, turning their backs on Eddie Howe and the team, oh man, I don't know what's going to happen here, but it's going to be really, 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 really a difficult month for Eddie Howe. But well, it is what it is. If you are a Newcastle fan, please leave a comment on the comment section and tell me about how you feel about this current thing that's ongoing at Newcastle United. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and also share your thoughts in the comment section. Bye-bye.